Now available on CD and cassette.
Welcome back to 4K Kings. My name is Matt.
I am Russ.
And welcome to your home of physical media, movie reviews, and music. Russ, we typically are here talking about our favorite films, our favorite physical media releases, but today we're going to talk about the best soundtracks to these movies that we love.
But before we dig into what our favorite soundtracks are, make sure you're subscribed. The day we hit 10,000 subscribers, we've guaranteed Christopher Walken a night out with the boys.
Up, up, up.
Ross, I'm going to start and just get this one out of the way. I've talked about this film extensively on this channel, talked about the soundtrack too. It absolutely is one of the greats of all time, not just the film itself, but as a soundtrack, maybe inspired other soundtracks like it down the line, as well as other films down the line, and that's Pulp Fiction and the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
Hey, I was listening to that.
Pulp Fiction, the original motion picture soundtrack collector's edition.
This is definitely a soundtrack that has stood the test of time, one that is widely regarded as, I don't know, sort of maybe, would you call it like a groundbreaking soundtrack for its time?
Quintessential. Mm-hmm. 90s.
Yeah.
Definitive. Yeah,
for sure. I love the different genres that it bobs and weaves through. That's that's kind of another theme in a lot of the soundtracks that I enjoy. Great surf rock, great pop, great R&B, soul, all that kind of stuff. I think another part of being a great soundtrack to me and why this one is, when you listen to it, you're like watching the movie again. It's because the soundtrack and the film itself are so intertwined and so interconnected. They've given you some of the movie clips in there so that when you're listening to it, it's in order in which the songs played in the movie, and then you have some of the excerpts that kind of just draw you into the world, which I absolutely love.
Now, you said it best. I grew up on it just like you. Introduced me to new genres. Yeah, dude, classic. We all grew up on it. If for some reason you haven't listened to the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, I don't know what planet you're living on.
Shit, Negro, that's all you had to say.
Well, inarguably, this is one of the best soundtracks of all time. And like you, since I was around the same age, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm going to jump in and debut with the Dazed and Confused Volumes 1 and 2 soundtracks, Matt.
Nice.
I'd argue about 60% of the entire film's budget went into acquiring the rights for this soundtrack, because Linklater wanted to use classic rock, honestly, butt rock, some a little bit of funk in there. In the 90s being the pinnacle of soundtracks, it sold millions of copies. It went like double platinum or something. So immediately they were like, yo, do that again.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
If you've seen Dazed and Confused, it's a film where almost every scene has music. So they couldn't fit every song onto one soundtrack. But due to how popular it was, Volume 2 got released. And it's just as stellar. A movie like Dazed and Confused, which has a real casual party, hangout type vibe, when you listen to these soundtracks, you're kind of at the party again. Yeah. You're with your friends again, you know? And for me personally, I didn't know any classic rock as a child. I wasn't around rock music. So Dazed and Confused helped me learn a lot.
Okay.
Honestly. So like these soundtracks were literally an education for me.
I'm glad you said that because I didn't think of it that way, but like just looking at my list of soundtracks that I'm going to share, almost all of them, not only are the soundtracks varied, but I went out to discover different things as a result of listening to them for the first time, because it's not like one artist, it's a bunch of different ones from a bunch of different time frames, and it's like, oh, dude, what's this soul song, this pop song, this techno song, this classic rock song. You're like you said, it's an education, which makes these great. And
stay tuned, because my next selection literally was an education that put me onto a genre of music that is one of my favorite genres to this day.
A friend of yours?
I'm going to follow up with a 1-2 as well, Russ. Of course, I'm going to go with Trainspotting, the original and the Green #2 album. Again, if you've watched this channel ever before, we've talked about Trainspotting plenty of times at this point. It's also in my top 5, and the soundtrack is also in my top 5. It's such a great mixture of music that drives the film, and when you take this soundtrack and listen to it after the fact, you still have the film with you. The original soundtrack here has pretty much like 95% of all of the music that was in the film, whereas the Green album has the other 5% that they didn't have the first time, plus songs that were inspired. So the orange one is by far the one to listen to, but the green one is a great runner-up. But again, it's just such a great, powerful soundtrack that's got such great highs, such great lows, and not a single skip in the bunch.
Yeah!
Let me say this. I completely agree with you. You know what I like about the green one that you brought up is that a lot of times you got those sort of, inspired by, which they're really not. It's just like some studio or label trying to cash in. Those songs literally were inspirations for Trainspotting. A lot of them were references in the novel. If you're going to cash in on a soundtrack success, they actually did a very good job with the Volume 2 on Trainspotting.
We obviously bought all these in the store. We bought these at some CD store, music store. There was no online, anything. And I remember going to some store and seeing Renton on the cover with a green thing. And I was like, what is that? Like, I'd already loved this so much. I had no idea. There was no internet. Like, you didn't know what was coming out. And when I saw that, bought it immediately. And just like you, was like, oh shit, the rest of the songs are on it.
Oh, man, that's groovy, man. That's groovy.
I am going with Dead Presidents, the Hughes Brothers film, the Dead Presidents soundtracks, volumes 1 and 2. This is one of the greatest collections of soul, R&B, late 60s, 70s soul and R&B music you will ever hear. If you were a novice like I was at 13 years old and stumbled across these soundtracks, I am not kidding. This is like one of the best goddamn playlists you could ever make of artists like James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, Spinners, OJ's, Curtis Mayfield, you name it, Isaac Hayes. You've seen me wear an Isaac Hayes shirt on this channel. It's because of these soundtracks. It was Pulp Fiction, hearing Let's Stay Together and Jungle Boogie, and then hearing this the same year that put me on a love affair with 70s R&B and soul and funk for life. You know what's even funnier?
What's that?
I have never seen Dead Presidents.
Man, you bullshit. No, I ain't. No shit.
I've seen parts of it over the years, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. I still listen to it damn near 30 years later.
Nice.
Hands down, arguably my favorite soundtrack of all time. It's the perfect starter pack for 70s R&B, soul, funk. In my opinion, one of the greatest genres of music to ever exist.
I want you to get a fucking driver's manual. I want you to study that motherfucker.
I'm going to cover one next that I actually don't own. I've never owned it. I should own it. I don't know why I don't, but I feel like it's an incredible soundtrack, and that is the Lost Highway soundtrack. So Lost Highway was a movie that obviously we've seen, and it's obviously extremely bizarre, and it was a movie I didn't even get or understand, but as I was watching it and listening to some of the songs, it was like, holy crap, and then ended up checking out the whole soundtrack, and there's a ton of like bangers on here, including maybe one of my favorite Nine Inch Nails songs, The Perfect Drug. I by Smashing Pumpkins is awesome. That's like kind of when they started going on more of their like electronic little stint. You know, say what you will about Rammstein, but the songs that are on here like somehow perfectly fit this movie. And again, is what launched them into stardom. But that was also a group that I was like, damn, this is some metal right here. The Battle of Menti score is all awesome as well. But then you kind of, slide in a few of these tracks that really just like take it to a next level. Lost Highway has always been a soundtrack that I really loved. And when it came out, I just was gravitated towards it. Even though I didn't understand the movie, the vibe of the soundtrack, the music that's on there gives you still the feeling of...
I'll say it, it's better than the movie.
I don't think so.
Sticking to education, when I was 15, I discovered this film and the soundtracks blew me away. Similar story to what I had with Dead Presidents, only this one was a little bit more on the disco-ish side.
Okay.
And some funk, all that stuff in there too as well, don't get me wrong, but it had a little bit more of the disco flavor and put me onto that. The Boogie Nights soundtracks, volumes 1 and 2, again, you cannot go wrong. There is no skip on either one of these. This features one of my favorite songs of all time, Spill the Wine, War with Eric Burdon, fucking masterpiece. If you've seen the movie, you know how musical it is. You know how iconic these songs are. Within the movie, outside of the movie, however you want to devour it. You got the best of my love. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Dude, this soundtrack. I'm gonna listen to this, dude, right away. As soon as we're done recording, I'm putting it on.
Is the song Mark Wahlberg sings in there?
It is. It is. Yes.
You got the touch. You got the power.
I'm going to give you one, Russ, that I think you wholeheartedly would back up as well. Maybe your favorite Tarantino soundtrack. Fresh with its The Wall Lifetime Guarantee sticker on it is Jackie Brown. For me, I'm a little bit more partial to Pulp Fiction, but this is not in any way saying that this is like lesser than. This is still an excellent soundtrack. It's superior, as Russ might mention.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of eclectic soundtrack as well.
Dude, you got Bloodstone coming on right after Johnny Cash.
Midnight Confessions, Didn't I Blow Your Mind, Strawberry Letter 23, Across 110th Street, Natural High, Street Life. God damn.
One of the baddest songs on
Which
there,
one which one's your
Bill
favorite?
Withers one, man. Listen to those lyrics. Hard. Listen to them next time you listen to that song. Do, 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 do.
Don't. Do,
Fuck it, dude. Hard.
We don't give a fuck about you.
Jackie Brown soundtrack, one of the best of all time. This is your favorite Tarantino soundtrack? It is. Yeah. I mean,
nothing against Pulp Fiction at all. I mean, Pulp Fiction is a strong soundtrack. But yeah, to me, Jackie Brown edges it.
You can't have a best list without putting some Tarantino in there. And to me, both of these deserve to be in there.
You ain't tell me shit.
F. Gary Gray's Friday. Classic soundtrack. Balances some old school R&B with a lot of modern hip hop, emphasis on the West Coast. Actually, I think it's all West Coast with the exception of Two Live Crew. Like, I was 12, 13 using movies and soundtracks to learn about these genres of music that I loved. There was no internet.
Yeah.
So like if I discovered Isaac Hayes, I was hearing it through movies, but also I'm a big West Coast hip hop fan. Again, if you watch this channel, I wear shirts of Corrupt, Above the Law, Dr. Dre, Death Row, etc. Fantastic. You can't go wrong. This is very, very essential 90s, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe throw you for a little bit of a loop, Russ. For whatever reason, it was so unexpected, this soundtrack to me, that would be this good, and that's Dumb and Dumber. The Dumb and Dumber soundtrack.
You're going to have to talk me into this theory.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Dumb and Dumber, available on the RCA Records label. It's a no-brainer.
I do like one song off this soundtrack.
Dead-Eye Dick, New Age Girl. Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead by the Crash Test Dummies is an awesome song. I'm not going to sing it to you here.
Please don't. I don't want to hear them sing it.
Dumb and Dumber, the soundtrack from America's #1 comedy smash of the year, featuring Willie Oneblood.
Crash by the Primitives, Where Do I Find My Heaven by the Gigolo Ants, If You Don't Love Me, I'll Kill Myself. This soundtrack has got an eclectic mix of 90s alternative bands that are all so effing good.
Man, I'm offended. We're doing a deep dive on Dumb and Dumber.
I mean, I'm trying to prove it to you that this is a banger. Like, this CD is a banger. I want the audience to tell me. The audience knows that this is one of the best soundtracks of all time, and definitely an underappreciated soundtrack that everyone should know.
No.
A truly defining soundtrack of the alternative scene in the 90s.
It's a great counterpart.
A great counterpart. Are you fucking insane? A great counterpart. The great counterpart to the Farrelly Brothers' Dumb and Dumber, the single soundtrack boasted hits such as Alice in Chains' Wood. Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, and Pearl Jam are literally in the movie. You know they contributed well to this soundtrack. I even love the songs in the movie that weren't on the soundtrack again, like the Sly and the Family Stone song and the John Coltrane cut. This is a great collection of what Seattle was at that time, minus Nirvana. But Nirvana was always an outlier anyway. I mean, this even has Mudhoney on it, but I don't have to say much. I mean, the Paul Westerberg stuff on here is incredible. He was the lead singer of The Replacements. The Chris Cornell acoustic stuff is incredible. Everyone knows Alice in Chains' Wood. The Smashing Pumpkins song on this. You said I is one of their best. Drown is one of the best Smashing Pumpkins songs of all time. And for years, it was only available on this. Again, this is your early 90s Seattle starter pack. And I grew up on it, and it is a masterpiece, I have to admit. Nobody's going to debate that Singles isn't one of the greatest soundtracks of all time.
Much like Dumb and Dumber.
Yes.
The starter pack to your 90s hits.
Oh, that's right. Nobody's going to argue that this is the contemporary to the Dumb and Dumber soundtrack.
No.
Russ, I just want to show really quick a couple of runner-ups.
Watch, he's going to pull out after Dumb and Dumber. Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever. How did this get in here? Godzilla.
So what's the problem?
1992's Boomerang. If you are my age, this soundtrack was bigger than the movie itself, and it still holds up to this day. Great collection of early 90s R&B, early 90s, maybe New Jack Swing, hip-hop pop type stuff. Mostly Babyface produced all of it, but it is a banger.
Tarantino's Sloppy Seconds, which is basically the Robert Rodriguez soundtracks of Desperado and For Dusk Till Dawn, which are basically his attempt at doing the exact same thing Tarantino did, right down to like the movie clips that are inserted. There's definitely some skips on here for sure, but there's enough bangers that I do still like listening to these, especially, to be honest, some of the original songs from Tito and the Tarantula, who's on both of these, I actually really enjoy in the movie and on these soundtracks. So I got to give a shout out to both of these.
I can't go without mentioning another early 90s ahead of its time compilation, Judgment Night, which featured hip-hop acts of that time collaborating with alternative and metal acts, which hadn't really been done yet. A couple years later, nu metal would become a thing, but this soundtrack was way ahead of its time, landmark, pioneering, and to this day holds up and is better than the nu metal shit it inspired.
Hackers. I know a lot of people like Hackers. There's a lot of like the techno, a lot of the original music that's on here I really, really liked a lot.
And of course, everyone knows Dumb and Dumber first, Natural Born Killers second. This is a great soundtrack. I know, it doesn't have Crash Test Dummies, but you can't go wrong. I don't have to say anything. It's a masterpiece.
Now available on CD and cassette.
We're out of time. That's the list. The best soundtracks of all time. We could obviously have a part 2. We could probably have a part 3, part 4, part 5. But we wanted to at least offer up what a initial best soundtracks of all time list could be. These are the quintessential. These start here, as Russ mentioned, your starter packs to a lot of different eras and genres and movies like Dumb and Dumber.
We could have done an entire segment on the Natural Born Killers soundtrack by itself.
If you want to hear a part 2 to this, if you have your own best soundtracks of all time, please let us know what your thoughts. Please let us know down below what you think about the ones we listed and what you would have put on this list as well. My name is Matt. This is Russ. We are your 4K Kings.
And our hearts will go on.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.